The news of fentanyl overdoses and deaths have been making news lately, and we wanted to see what Tulsa police are doing to fight this issue and what they're seeing. Tulsa Police Chief Wendell Franklin joins us for his monthly visit. Good morning. Good morning, Wendell.
Good morning. How are you?
So, well, I'm good, and I really wanted to talk about this because we report about this all the time on the news. You're seeing it. Your guys are seeing it out on the streets. When did this really overtake meth as the biggest issue? Because when I moved here 13 years ago, everything was about meth and meth labs.
Yeah. So what Tulsa experienced was a meth epidemic, and then right after that, we transitioned into heroin. We used to never see heroin, but it became a big issue here. Obviously, it's an opioid, and now we are into the fentanyl, which is also an opioid. And most of the drugs that we're seeing, those drugs are laced with fentanyl.
Yeah, and fentanyl, and we were researching this, it's a synthetic opioid that's used for chronic or severe pain following surgery, a Schedule II narcotic that under medical supervision does have a medical use, but this is the problem. It's not under medical supervision, and it's everywhere right now with abusers, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And the illicit drugs that are out there on the street, you don't know what you're getting. And we try and educate people and tell people that these drugs, these are not just harmless drugs. We passed State Question 780 several years ago, and that really hampered possession cases, and so now we have said it's okay to have a little bit of drugs and this and that, and nothing's going to happen. There's no enhancement of the crime anymore. So it's a lot more difficult to deal with, especially as a police officer out on the streets.
It's very interesting. And speaking of the quantities, Wendell, I did want to show folks this at home, these pictures from the DEA. And the DEA says this right here. This is a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl. 2 milligrams, you're saying?
Yes, 2 milligrams can kill you. And that's not very much at all. And we're seeing it out there. And when you get drugs, if you buy illicit drugs, you don't know what's in that drug, and we are finding more and more drugs out there on our streets that are laced with fentanyl, because the key is to try and get you addicted to it and get you to come back for more.
Highly addictive synthetic opioid, as we've already mentioned, and just some other examples of just the small amounts of fentanyl they can kill you. And as I've been doing these stories, and doing these stories from the desk, I just keep thinking, how can anyone survive fentanyl? How does a human being, if it's that small, how does anyone survive a dose?
Yeah, it's, the human body's an amazing piece of science, right? Mm-hmm. And some people can and some can't. Some on the first dose, they overdose and die, and some don't. And obviously, we also have other things out there that can help us save a life, such as Narcan that all of our officers carry, and that certainly helps officers out in the field when they run across someone experiencing an overdose.
And I did want to talk about that, because we have Narcan here. We keep some at the station, and I'll let you kind of talk about it and how you use it, what it is, and the importance, because this can save officers' lives too, not just those who have overdosed.
Yeah, the Narcan actually just goes into the receptors of and cuts off where the fentanyl would go, or the opioid would go, and actually saves lives. It brings a person back out of a state of unconsciousness and allows them to, for medical intervention, to get them to a hospital and ultimately, hopefully, survive.
Officers have had to have this used on them recently. Kind of tell us about some of the scenarios that they're seeing out in the streets where, again, you all don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah, again, we talked about how potent fentanyl is and the absorption rate. If you get some on your skin and it absorbs into the skin, it can do the exact same thing. You can overdose from that. You can get it from inhaling it in the air. And so our officers are running across this probably on a daily basis now, and in exposing themselves to it. We had one officer exposed to it and had to be brought back using Narcan.
A little bit of time left, but I did want to ask Chief Franklin about what resources that you'd like to see, new technology, what things that would help you keep your officers safe and help people out there.
Well, again, I will go back to legislators and what we passed several years ago with State Question 780 and talk about just When we pass legislation, there's an effect that happens, and the effect is, yes, we free our prisons, we reduce the amount of paperwork and all of that. However, the end result is now we have individuals out on the streets who us intervening into their lives probably will send them down a pathway that gets them help. Now we are not in that intervention because it is not, it's a crime where if we make an arrest, they get right back out. There's no enhancement. So back in the day, you used to make several arrests, and each time you made the arrest, there was an enhanced penalty for that. That does not exist anymore.
Well, Chief Wendell Franklin, this was enlightening, a lot of things to think about. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
There's a new coffee shop opening in town. Meredith McCown live at Summer Moon and explains what moon milk is. Kind of sounds like Star Wars. Also, speaking of the moon, astronauts could be sporting a different look when they make their trip up there. A look at the new suits in the works for the planned 2025 mission.